Hello, today we are joined by Heeral. Heeral, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for having me on. Yes, I'm Heeral. I'm the founder of Convergent, which is an EDI consultancy. So everything to do with equality, diversity, and inclusion. Not a very popular sector to be in these days, but I'm glad to say I've been warning since 2022 that we need to be aware that we are not popular and there are reasons for it. So I've been doing this work for about 10 years. And prior to that, something completely different. I used to be an actuary, which basically means I used to analyze risks. And specifically, I used to analyze insurance risks. And really, I thought I was stepping away from that. But all I do now is I help employers manage their people risks. And that has never been, that's always been something they needed to do. But it's even more essential now because the people risks that employers are facing have become very public and the public is interested. So my work is all around that.
Yeah, so I think we're going to have a very interesting conversation today because, we kind of met each other on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
met each other on LinkedIn through the EDI stuff that's going on, and through Tanya's podcast, This Isn't Working. You've been on that one, and you saw the recent podcast that I released with one of my guests who came on, and she was a DEI expert, and some of the things that she said. Well, it was quite a tense interview, I have to say. I try to get guests on. I don't like to have confrontations on my podcast, but there was a point in where that started and the conversation started, and I just thought, no, I'm gonna have to challenge this because I can't let it pass what she's saying because,
Mhm.
yeah, very very one-sided view of people, and this is what's happening.
Yeah, and I think that's why the EDI, DEI, whatever you want to call it, that's why the EDI sector is facing so much pushback, right? There are people working within it who have very clear ideas about what is okay, what isn't okay, what is inclusive, what isn't inclusive. And when you go down a path in that way that is quite blinkered, where you're not open to considering other viewpoints, exactly when biases creep in, and that's exactly when you then end up with outcomes that your clients absolutely have not signed up for. So I got in touch with you after I watched that podcast. I think the first thing I saw was maybe a clip, and
Yeah.
then I watched the whole thing. I don't remember what the clip was anymore, but I got in touch with you because I said, I'm glad you had this person on. Shows people what's wrong in some of the EDI, in some of the ways in which practitioners get involved with this work. What's scary is that this person has lots of letters after their name, and so their clients are going to immediately assume that they are going to come in and do this work in an open-minded, unbiased way. But the interview to me seemed to show that this person didn't really have that capacity and was unaware of a lot of things. Now, everyone has got awareness gaps. Even I work in EDI and I've been doing it for 10 years and I'm still learning new stuff regularly. But there are some things that have become quite fundamental because of the national and in some cases maybe international conversations that happen around certain topics. And it was just frightening to me that this
Yeah.
person didn't know about some of those things, but wasn't even able to fathom certain things and said other things that were really problematic about how laws should be applied. So I think it'll be interesting to get into all of that. And then also kind of to give my perspective on, not on this person and their work, but on EDI itself, what's wrong in the sector from
Yeah.
from my perspective.
So, of course, when I do a podcast, I create shorts and I share them on social media. And so I had a lot of comments on that interview from lots of different people. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't. Some of
Uh-huh.
them just like one woman I know, she's aware of this, but she's not right in it like I am. I kind of know what like people like me guest are saying.
Yeah.
I'm kind of used to hearing those arguments. She wasn't. She was like, oh my God. But that's the scary thing, isn't it? That these people, it's not just one person, it's like a mindset that lots of people have, and they think that we are in an echo chamber. It's almost like everything that they are doing, they project onto us when we have a different perspective.
I think, it's very normal for people in general to be in echo chambers.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're doing the kind of work that I'm doing, you have to be aware that every time you enter into a topic, especially on social media, you have to be so aware of the fact that you might be going into an echo chamber, and you actively have to seek out people that have got unpopular opinions. You have to.
Yeah.
Because the reason why we are seeing an erosion of people's right to express themselves, for people's right to hold religious and philosophical beliefs that are enshrined in law, the reason why we're seeing an erosion of all that is because people at the ground level are willingly wanting others to be shut down, and they are trying to shut other people down whilst not being able to see that the natural end point of that is that people that have power at various levels within government are all too eager for us to do that to each other because they want to do that too. We're seeing an erosion of rights happening. Article 19 is an organization that regularly looks at the state of our freedoms to express ourselves across the globe. And I actually wrote about this in my paper that I released in May. So I'd taken what was at that point in time the latest information. And since May, where they have finished analyzing 2024 data, the UK is no longer a free society. So there's about 4 or 5 different categories. Green is free. We have freedom of expression. Now, not without any criticisms, of course, but we were a free society along with many other Western nations. As of, I think, a month ago, we've dropped down 1 level. Now, that is a slippery road for us to be on. And it worries me when I see EDI people who then go in and work in really big organizations, right? And so there's a trickle effect, a ripple effect to all of the work that we do. And they go into organizations saying that no one should ever have any hurt feelings. I mean, you can't get through life without being offended by someone.
Absolutely not.
And no one can, right? They act as though they're some sort of paragons of virtue. They're really righteous and that they would never, ever offend someone. And I find some of what they say offensive.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not asking for them to never be able to speak again.
Yeah.
But they are asking for that. They don't
Yeah.
realize they're asking for it, but they are asking for it. When you say no one should ever be hurt, that's what you're asking for. You're asking for people to basically not talk to each other, because
Yeah.
that's the only way you can go through life without ever hurting someone's feelings.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a real problem with this, and that's why I wrote my paper.
And that erosion of free speech is an erosion of our democracy as well, because how do you get consensus without that debate?
How do you hold people to account if you're not free to ask questions? And sometimes questions are really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And sometimes questions make certain groups very uncomfortable, whereas other groups are happy with those questions. So who gets to decide what questions we are allowed to ask or not allowed to ask? This is kind of why I'm really glad I'm able to have this conversation with you, because we need to be able to show this flip side, that EDI is not about shutting people down. Because when you shut people down, you ignore entire groups, and there's lots of groups of people that EDI work just willfully ignores or is actually completely ignorant to.
Yeah. So one of the that was ignored and highlighted on that podcast episode was trans widows. So my guest had never heard of trans widows, so didn't know that they existed. And when I tried to explain to her who they were and what, like, generally, obviously you can't, I was generalizing about a group of people, and obviously it's a generalization. That's what generalizations are. But she was trying to say that was like anybody who'd split up with their ex-partner, when actually there's themes that run through the experience of trans widows, like abuse and coercion, and at work, if you're celebrating someone's abuser, then that's a problem. Whether they're in the workplace or not, this abuser, you're bringing that person who's caused this person harm into the workplace and celebrating them.
Yeah, so what was interesting to me about that part of the conversation was simply that this person who was seemingly very aware of the rights of one group, right, was completely unaware of some of the fallout that can occur when some people transition, right? So whether it's trans widows experiencing that fallout, in smaller numbers, trans widowers, there's also the children of trans people. The conversation that happens is that when someone transitions, everyone around them has to celebrate it. And some people might celebrate it, but not everyone is going to celebrate it because it's a fundamental shift in a family dynamic that maybe not everyone is emotionally ready for or prepared to engage in. And so it creates a change in a family that no one ever signed up for. And whilst maybe, whilst the trans person themselves, it's maybe a very difficult thing for them to go through, that doesn't mean that their family is automatically just going to be okay with it. They're going to have their own feelings about it too. And for some people, those are feelings of deep loss, deep grief at their partner no longer being the person who they initially got together with. And so that's very different to other kinds of relationship breakdown. And I'm not going to say whether it's worse or not, because every situation is going to be different. I know people in relationships that have broken down where it's been absolutely horrific for them, and other people with similar, on the surface, similar circumstances, and it's been the best thing that ever happened to them.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So I'm not gonna start comparing whether it's worse to be a trans widow or to be an actual widow or to just be a person whose long-term relationship has broken down. But the point is, bringing it back to the workplace, like you said, if a workplace, like say the internal HR team, doesn't even know that these groups might exist, well, the job of someone like me is to just ask a few questions and say, do you know? And have you got an awareness of the fact that not everyone is necessarily going to be signed up to the celebrations that you want the workplace to engage in? And this can happen in loads of other ways as well. It's not just with this particular topic, which is it's basically dynamite, right?
Yeah.
When you're holding it,
Mm-hmm.
you might be holding it, but the fuse is lit.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point you have to kind of figure out, okay, what point am I going to throw this stick of dynamite and not carry on this conversation? Because it's a really difficult conversation for people to have. A lot of EDI people won't even touch it because if you say the wrong thing, is it going to be career suicide? I don't know. Who knows? I'm having this conversation with you, but you know what? I'm ready to fight it. So if anyone wants to come at me over anything that I've said so far, let's have the discussion. But it's like a stick of dynamite, and there are other conversations like that as well. So EDI people, EDI as a topic, seems to assume that all people of Black origin are left-wing. And I actually wrote about this in my paper too, that Black conservatives are completely unseen by EDI because EDI fundamentally has become a progressive ideology that attaches itself to progressive politics, and it shouldn't be attaching itself to politics. Inclusion is not fundamentally left or right, but it's attached itself to the left, which is why the problems are occurring in America as they are, because it became ideological, and it's ideological here too, because whatever happens in America, we pick up and roll with it on a slight delay. And I've been saying since 2020 that the EDI pushback in the UK is coming. It's sort of here right now. But my word, if we don't wake up, and if EDI people who are doing this work ideologically and politically, if they don't wake up and smell the coffee, then they are very likely to face a similar sort of pushback that America has faced this year, because we are also seeing a shift in political allegiances. So whether it's ignoring Black conservatives or whether it's demonizing Tory voters and Reform UK voters without actually asking a question like, why is this happening? Why are there some Black conservatives? People shouldn't be surprised that Black conservatives exist. Why would they ever assume that all Black people are all Labour voters. That is such a dumb assumption to make. So
Yeah.
just like with everything else, why we need to ask ourselves, what are the reasons? Not because we think they shouldn't have those reasons, or we need to talk to them and say, change your mind. Of course not. But just to understand. Because then if we understand, we can meet people where they are.
Yeah. So when I first, entered the workplace and, I had all this equality and diversity training and I thought of it, I was really in favor of it. I didn't want to discriminate against anybody. And so thinking about whether I could be without realizing it was important. But it just feels like it's been twisted. And now it's very authoritarian.
Yes.
And it does feel like it's just toxic. But I think in terms of it moving from not being talked about to talked about, like obviously I first started talking about this publicly when I stood for election last year in the general election. And I did put something on LinkedIn, but not very much about standing. But there was nobody posting about this back then that I could see. And it's only since, only very recently, I started connecting with more women in the movement on LinkedIn and across other platforms. But it was when the Supreme Court judgment happened, that's when it really kind of exploded, and all the DEI people who were fanatical about this, this gender stuff, they started posting that they weren't going to follow the law.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that I find most shocking from a professional perspective, is that in-house, forget consultants for the minute, right? Like consultants like me, just forget us for a minute. But in-house HR and EDI people were planting their flag in the sand. They were saying, this is where I stand on their professional profile. Okay.
Yeah.
That's linked back to their work. And I can tell you this right now. If I was an employee and I was accused of any form of discrimination or harassment, right? Any of the 9 protected characteristics, I don't care which one. But if I was accused of harassment or discrimination, what I would be doing first is trawling through the LinkedIn profiles of my HR team to see whether they are showing publicly that they have the capacity to be impartial. That is their number one job, to be impartial, because they're there to protect all employees, not some. And so that's the first thing I would do, because if I could see that this person has shown they cannot be impartial, even if it's not related to the same protected characteristic that I'm being accused of, harassing someone over, even if it's not the same one, you can say, look at this. They don't know how to be impartial. Why would I think they can be impartial when investigating this and what's happened in this scenario? They have, and by posting in that way, they have exposed themselves and their employer to legal risk. And how they don't understand that, I do not know. I do not understand the desperate urge to basically virtue signal. Even if you really do believe in this, your job as a professional is to be impartial. So if you really want to talk about what an ally you are to any group, I don't care which group, you need to be doing that on your personal profile that has no affiliation to where you work, and hopefully is a private profile, not a public one. Not just anyone can look you up and see it. So I just don't understand how it's come to be this way. And to be honest, the sheer number of HR and EDI people that were doing that means that you've got to take it back to the source, which means they have somehow forgotten, or maybe it was never hammered home enough, that their job is to be impartial. Who should be doing that hammering home? The CIPD. So you have to take it back to the source. That doesn't mean that you give that individual a free pass, because ultimately they're still going to be investigating things and they have exposed their employer to risk. Again, the risk element. But how has it come to be that there's so many of them doing that? Why is their professional body, why has it not done a better job of teaching them that you're meant to be impartial? Your personal opinions on very, very fraught social issues are not to be shared online. I don't get it.
It's quite shocking, isn't it? It just seems that every organisation like in the whole of the UK and the Western world even, has been infiltrated by activists. That's what it feels like.
It feels like that, but there are a lot of sensible HR people who just lurk on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
They're just watching. And I've spoken to some of them. Some of them I've spoken to directly. Some I've heard about through my conversations with Tanya, because she also speaks to them as well. And they are telling us that they are running their ship the way it's meant to be run, and they're not putting up with ideological nonsense. But people who are like that, why would they engage with the ideological nonsense that's on LinkedIn? I have to, because it's part of my job. I'm trying to get people to see that being ideologically driven not going to help you
Yeah.
in your purpose as an employer. In fact, it's going to get in the way of your purpose as an organization that seeks to actually do something that isn't being a pseudo-political commentator. Like, you don't exist to comment on politics and social issues. You're there to create a good environment for your people so that they can do the work that they are meant to do, that they're getting paid to do.
Yeah, there's so
Why
many
did you
posts.
social commentator?
There's so many posts on LinkedIn about it's just virtue signal and you should be doing more than just flying a flag. And I'm like, but it's a business. It's not there to fly flags and be political. It's there to make money or whatever it does, make widgets.
And, it's interesting because I have been asked in the past why I don't post. I rarely post. I can't think of the last time I put up a post about an awareness day, an awareness week, or an awareness month, any of that stuff, right? None of them. I very rarely post about that stuff anymore. So not even South Asian Heritage Month. Don't care. It's not relevant to the work that I'm doing for my clients. And so I've actually had to write about this and say, now I'm definitely never going to post about this stuff unless there's a really good reason to. Because if a client of mine thought that their work on inclusion was that work on inclusion stops and starts by, writing a post every time there's LGBTQ History Month, Pride Month, South Asian Heritage Month, International Women's Day. Don't even talk to me about that. I'm not interested. All of these things, I would never be doing anything else. That's the only thing that I would be doing. And that would make me a very surface level practitioner. Because what does it actually do? If I make up a post on International Women's Day about how great it is to be a woman, or look at what this particular woman has achieved, if someone else wants to do that, let them, that's fine. But you're not going to find me doing that because it doesn't actually achieve anything. Raising awareness, yes, okay. It raises awareness that different groups exist. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to help my clients create a positive work environment for whoever works there. It doesn't matter what group they are part of.
Yeah, definitely. I think being in business myself, I've had like lots of training and stuff about social media, and that's one of the things you are like encouraged to do is post about awareness days, because then you'll get more engagement and it'll help. But it doesn't actually do any of that. It doesn't help you sell whatever you're trying to sell. It just, yeah, it's a bit.
You're in really hot water. So, do you remember Blackout Tuesday in 2020 when
Oh, was that
everyone was
about
posting black
BLM?
squares?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't
so when
take part
everyone
in
was.
that.
So, what happened on Blackout Tuesday, which was in June of 2020, I don't remember the exact date, was that, and I don't know how it started, but basically the thing was post a black square on Instagram, so that the whole of Instagram was basically just black squares, right? To show your support for BLM and your kind of anger towards what had happened to George Floyd. What happened was two things. Activists in America, because there were protests going on, and in some cases there were riots happening, activists had been using various different hashtags, including just, hashtag BLM, to draw people's attention to issues in particular areas. And then all these individuals and corporates flooded Instagram with black squares and also using those hashtags, which meant that activists couldn't get information out, because whenever anyone typed in that hashtag, all they saw was a sea of black squares. So it actually got in the way of what some people were trying to do. So that's point number one. Point number two, all these flipping companies putting up a black square to kind of say, look at us, we also support this, and aren't we so great? Look, we don't believe in racism. And then employees started speaking up and saying, hang on a minute, what's with this black square? Because when I raised a complaint about racism that I've faced in this company, or when, more than one of us, when we have raised complaints about racism faced in this organization, we've been ignored. So what the hell is this nonsense right now? Okay, so all this virtue signaling stuff has to stop. Clean up your own house. Stay off social media when it comes to these sorts of social issues. It's not an employer's job to be standing there, just clean up your own bedroom first. Like, do you know what's going on in your company? Do you know how people feel? And not just one group, actually find out. And don't do it through some lazy ass engagement survey. Do a proper engagement survey. Ask some difficult questions. And then if you think you've got your house in order, think about whether you want to make public statements about any given issue, whatever the issue might be.
Yeah. I think the other issue with the BLM thing was after all that happened, it kind of came out that there was, and I can't remember the details, but I'm sure that there was something that wasn't very great about BLM and there was some corruption or something like that. I can't remember the details. I wouldn't want to say, but you don't necessarily know that it is a good cause unless you look into it really well. So you're leaving yourself open on that side of things as well.
That can happen too. Yes, that absolutely can happen. And that has happened across many different sorts of campaigns in the past. And so that's where due diligence comes in. But if you've got an HR team that's ideologically driven, where is the incentive to do any due diligence when the only incentive or the attraction is to look good?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But it's got to be deeper, hasn't it? Because you're not going to make a better culture in your workplace by posting a black square. It's not good enough, is it? So one of the groups of people that I'm seeing a lot of negativity and despondency from is white men. And I think that was one of the things that my guest alluded to as well. She actually called them nasty group of people, didn't she?
Yeah, I just remembered that. I'm glad you brought it up because that was one of the reasons why I got in touch with you. If I remember rightly, she said that white men have caused so much problem in America. So I don't think we said at the start of this episode that this guest of yours is American, right?
Yeah, she's American, yeah.
Yeah. So she's based in America. And she said white men have caused so many issues over there. And in terms of, well, I don't remember if she elaborated, but basically alluded to problems in society.
I
That
think she mentioned
separate
crime, didn't
laws.
she?
Right, okay. So she said separate and different laws should exist for white men. Now, this is what I mean by the complete intellectual inconsistency, because if a person said to her, there should be different laws to deal with black people, or there should be different laws to deal with basically any specific group, actually ridiculous, because to have laws like that means that we are assigning that one group is better than another. And the law is meant to see us all equally. We're all meant to be held accountable fairly and squarely. Because if she can say there should be different laws to deal with white men, how can she ever argue against somebody else saying there should be different laws to deal with black people or Muslim people or, I don't know, name a group. It could be anyone, right?
Absolutely.
So that's what I mean about that intellectual inconsistency. And that's why I was so shocked, because PhD after her name, right? That immediately adds a sense of gravitas and seriousness to a person. And so employers or organizations are going to hire someone like that off the back of the letters. And then they come in and say something like this on a podcast. I don't get it.
Yeah. I'm sure she mentioned crime. They were responsible for like most of the crime. And Like, I didn't have any sort of comeback for that, but my gut just went, no, that's wrong. But I wasn't able to challenge that in the moment because,
It's not even about whether her statement was wrong, like I don't have the statistics to hand, right? But that's irrelevant. The
yeah,
law needs to look at all men equally, all women
all
equally,
women.
everyone equally, right? So if I kill someone versus if my brother kills someone, why should I get a lesser sentence? Women fundamentally do get lesser sentences than men, but why? Should
Yeah.
mine be increased or should his be decreased?
Yeah, it
You
should
know?
be. It should be. And of course, that's happening in the police as well. They've been ideologically driven as well, and they've just lost a court case about attending Pride event.
I think I heard about that, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, about attending Pride events in their uniforms. It'll
yeah,
be interesting to see how that. I haven't followed it closely at all, so I can't speak to the specifics of that. But if it is as it sounds, where the judge said you have to show impartiality, which means you cannot go there in uniform, then it'll be interesting to see how that filters through other police forces.
yeah.
I
So
mean, we're just going to have to wait and
they're
see.
able to go and police the event, but they're not able to take part in their uniform. So this was a woman called Lindsay Smith, and I actually know her because she works in the same town as where I live, and she got into trouble because she was tweeting about Newcastle United. No, she's a Newcastle United fan. She
Right.
tweeted about her gender critical views online and
Okay.
was investigated by the police and banned from Newcastle United because of these tweets. They were nothing to do about she wasn't in the stadium, it was nothing to do with it, but someone targeted her and she was banned. So then she met Harry Miller from We Are Fair Cop through that,
Okay.
and he said, "Let's go to Pride." And they dressed up. One of them was a hot dog. Lindsay was a hot dog, dressed up as a hot dog, and I can't remember what Harry was dressed up as, but he was dressed up as well. And they got the police to stand and hold these signs, which were just awful. Like, I can't remember exactly what it said, so I wouldn't like to exaggerate that, but they weren't very nice. And then they went back to the police station and said, "Will you hold these gender critical signs?" And they wouldn't. So then they took them to court. And, the police are supposed to behave without fear or favour. They're supposed to act without
So
fear or
again, the
favour.
impartiality, right?
Uh-huh.
Again, the
Yeah.
impartiality piece. But going back to the fact that she was banned from attending football matches for expressing her belief
Hmm.
and not even at the football stadium. So,
Yeah.
first of all, whatever, but she expressed a belief that is a protected belief and she got banned from attending. Now, I think that's been reversed, right? Has that been
No,
reversed?
she's still
It
banned.
hasn't.
The court case
She's
is
still banned.
ongoing for that.
Okay, so now let's go back to what we were saying right at the beginning about freedom of expression being eroded in this country.
Hmm.
We have to think about the natural end point of that. Who is deciding? Who are we letting decide what beliefs we are allowed to hold? And who are we handing that power over to? Do you trust them? And even if you trust the person that has that power today because it suits you, how do you know you're going to be able to trust the person that has the power tomorrow? Because they might not think the same way as you, or they might say they think the same way as you, and then as soon as they've got power, they say, actually, change my mind, sorry, bad luck. So
Yeah.
why do we want to give these powers away?
Hmm.
I don't understand it. There are countries in the world, if you looked at that Article 19 map, where you can see countries that are in crisis when it comes to freedom of expression. So countries like Iran, Russia, China, I think. I think those are the main ones. And then there's a spectrum from the ones in crisis all the way to the ones that are free. I want someone who is asking for our freedoms here to be eroded and tell me, hand on heart, how many of those other countries they want to move to. Tell me.
Yeah. Probably be none.
Like, from the basis of whether or not you would be able to express yourself and live your life freely. I don't even just mean express yourself verbally, but just express yourself and live the life that you want to live.
Hmm.
How many of those countries are you going to be able to do that in? Tell me which one of those countries that you would want to move to and actually move there. And then I will respect the fact that in this country, you're saying to me, I shouldn't be able to do X, Y, Z. Go to one of those countries where you're not allowed to do it. Then tell me that here, me sitting here, that I also should not be allowed to do that. Don't sit here and benefit from all of the freedoms and then try to take mine away.
Yeah, it's really worrying, isn't it? And that's the whole premise of my podcast, just to get mainly women on to talk about whatever they want to, because we are losing our freedoms here, and it is worrying, and it's a slippery slope. I mean, it was like lockdowns that really opened my eyes to that, when they told us who we could see, who we could spend time with, what we should wear. And, expressing that on social media at the time was a bit explosive as well. Like, I got blocked because I said the government shouldn't be telling us what to wear. But it's dangerous.
And it comes back to, do you trust those people? Do you think they are, some of them just aren't clever enough to be making these decisions. Some of them have got nefarious intentions. Do we honestly say, hand on heart, that every single person that is in Parliament has got the public's best intentions at heart? If you think the answer is no, then we shouldn't be so ready to let them, of all people, tell us how to live our lives. Again, in any given scenario, whether you're thinking about COVID or whether you're thinking about something else, why would they be okay to make decisions about one issue but not the other one? You either trust them to make those decisions wholesale on everything, or you don't trust them at all. I mean, look, I'm kind of exposing myself here. I am not a fan of our government. I don't think the people that sit in Parliament on average have got good intentions or pragmatic intentions. Let's just say that. Let's not call it good or bad, because that's a matter of opinion. In terms of our rights and freedom of expression, freedom of speech, I think it's probably come across to any listeners that this stuff gets me really angry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it gets me really so angry. And the only reason I'm not swearing right now is because I know Tanya won't approve and I'm trying to be professional. But I'm so flippin' angry.
It is.
Yeah.
It's enraging. And that is the worry, that we're going to lose, our fundamental rights. I think it really is highlighted when I listen to politicians from the past and how they talk. Like, for example, I was watching a podcast with Anne Widdecombe yesterday.
Okay.
And it's really jarring hearing those kinds of opinions. Well, it is at first when you haven't heard them for a while, but that was kind of the normal way everyone talked when I was growing up. It was quite, it was when I was growing up, Thatcher was in power. It was too little to know whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. But people were more conservative. They were able to talk to each other. Were able to debate. And I think that ability has been eroded over a lot of years. I think it's happened since the 90s.
But back then, and I remember in the 90s, do you remember Mary Whitehouse?
Yeah.
Who was trying to, get, I don't know, to sanitize TV. She was trying to sanitize TV a little bit. And people used to make fun of her. The left used to say, no, free speech, all of that, etc., etc. We should be able to make these kind of jokes and whatever the specific arguments were. But it was free speech. We should be able to express ourselves. And that was the left saying it. Now look at what the left is saying.
Yeah. That's how I
And
feel
how
like,
they...
though.
Yeah.
Telling people off for being like fetishy.
I mean, it's just such a strange state of affairs. Yeah, so this is why I've been in the EDI space for nearly 11 years, and I've seen it change a lot over the last 5 years, and been talking about how we need to wind our necks in a bit for the last 3 years, and people aren't doing that, and that's why we are where we are. Like, I've been warning about the pushback since 2022. And anyone who works in EDI and didn't see this coming, anyone who was surprised at the level of dissatisfaction, and I'm being kind with the use of that word, but anyone in EDI who's surprised at the level of dissatisfaction as to how this work has been done and the impact that that has had on workplaces and by extension just people, they've got no business being in this job. Like, how are you asleep to all of this?
Yeah.
People that were saying, oh, I'm coming off X because it's so toxic on there. You know what? Yeah, I've seen some pretty crappy things on X. Yeah, I've seen some things that make me go, wow, that's what some people think about people like me. I mean, okay, but is that a big surprise? We know that not everyone's going to get along and there are going to be some people that have very hateful opinions, but it's only because I'm on X that, and I don't mean like on my work account, I have like an anonymous account where I can actually look at and follow and like things, and they hide likes now, so it's different, but I can engage in conversations without worrying about being cancelled. Looking at what's been going on and how the mood has been shifting, anyone who was surprised that Trump won in November has no business being in EDI.
Yeah.
It was so obvious it was going to happen.
Yeah.
It was obvious from back in the summer. It was so obvious that he was going to win, and so people who claim to do EDI work should be aware of that. And to run away from X just means you're willingly retreating into an echo chamber that makes you feel nice. Well, there's nothing about EDI work that's easy, right? Anyone that does EDI work has faced tricky questions, has faced tricky customers, right? People in a workshop that you can just see from their faces, they're not bought in at all. And sometimes that is really hard to take just as a human being, because you're like, I'm here, I'm trying to do something good, I'm trying to create a better workplace environment, and I can see this person has walked in totally cynical. Now, usually by the time I've finished one of my workshops, they've changed their minds because they've come in thinking they're going to be preached at for an hour or half a day. They're going to be preached at, that they're going to be told that they are bad simply for having been born, that they shouldn't have XYZ beliefs and that they should have these beliefs and that I'm the one telling them that. No, of course not. But there are EDI people that do that.
Yeah.
They assign malintent to people for an accident of birth. Did you know you were going to be born white? Did I know I was going to be born brown? What the hell? None of us knew that.
Yeah. Well, I think we got it right when we didn't take any notice of colour. It was like the aim was to be colourblind, but be aware of cultural differences. That was the sort of equality and diversity that I sort of cut my teeth on, if you like. That was the kind of training that was in the workplaces where I used to work, because my background's in the voluntary sector. It was it was important to the work that we did to, to be aware that people lived in different ways and to not accidentally or, have views that harmed anybody else. That's a good aim, isn't it? So I suppose that all started with good intentions, but it's gone way beyond that.
I had an EDI person say to me, we were having a conversation, and I don't remember how it came up, but my closest friend is on paper quite different to me. Okay, so my closest friend, first of all, she's 10 years younger than me. We've known each other for about 14 years. She's 10 years younger than me. She's white. She's from the East End of London. I'm from the Northwest End of London. From a working class family. Whereas I'm from, I guess, a middle class family. So on paper, in EDI terms, nothing in common. Like, how are we ever how would we might connect in the workplace, but how would we ever become best friends? Because the assumption is that there is always an underlying racial barrier that exists between us. And this is what this EDI person was saying to me. It's like, right, so how is this friendship work? Like, what? And I said to them, my friend is a human being. We connect with each other on that basis. I don't bring race into the friendship she doesn't bring race into that. Doesn't mean we don't occasionally talk about it, especially because of the line of work I'm in. That doesn't mean we don't occasionally talk about it, but it is not a feature of
Yeah.
our friendship. Like, imagine, because if this person was saying, yeah, but what about the social power structures, and your friend's white, and so she's gonna have had a very better, easier life than you. I'm like, oh my God. If either of us brought that sort of lens into a friendship, how can you even be friends? Because that's implying that I would be looking at my friend and saying, I mean, you've had a better life than me, and so you need to be a certain way around me because just because of the color of my skin, you should be assuming that I have a worse life than you, and therefore assuming that I'm disempowered in that
Mm,
assumption. What a condescending thing to assume about me.
absolutely. And it
Yeah?
doesn't take into account class at all, ever. And class it's a really weird one, isn't it? Because I think the lines about who's which class have got quite blurred because, like I would say that I'm from a working class background, but my parents aspired to and moved into sort of middle class area, and I went to school with other middle class, you know what I mean? And so there isn't really clear like lines to say, well, you are this and you are that. It's movable.
And depending on how you define it, then
Huh?
if I look at my life, then as a family, we've probably moved
Yeah,
around,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not, again, it depends on how you define it. So I experienced for most of my life a mostly middle class life, but there's been times in parts of my childhood where you wouldn't define it in that way if you're looking at income of parents or the types of jobs that they had at various points. If you looked at my own life, then as an adult, a middle class life after uni, because I had a very good job that gave me a lifestyle that was pretty nice. But then I actively stepped away from that to go into EDI, and the first 4 years of that were hard.
Yeah.
There was nothing middle class about my life at that point because of the money that I wasn't making anymore, right?
Mhm,
And now things are different again. So if we're only basing it on finances, things move around.
mhm.
If we're basing it on culture, then maybe it's a little bit more static, unless someone completely changes how they live and how they talk and how they dress and the places they go on holiday to, and they change their friend circle as
Yeah,
well. But if culturally you don't shift, then maybe your class stays the same no matter how much money you have. And that's why it can't be codified into law,
yeah.
or it's very difficult to codify it into law as another protected characteristic, because people define their class in totally different ways.
It's definitely something to be aware of, though, isn't it? Like if you're looking at it from a workplace point of view about including people and making sure you don't like discriminate, like it's something you would think about, like if you're, I don't know, organizing a night out even, you might think about people on different income levels because, you don't know if people can afford to go to the swanky place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to take your employees to a swanky place, you better be paying for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And if you're not willing to pay for it, then suck it up and go to Weatherspoons.
yeah,
But if you as the someone senior in the company wants to go somewhere nice, it's a bit rich to expect everyone to financially contribute to that for a decision that you are making
yeah,
because of a personal preference.
yeah,
To be honest, when I worked in the city, we used to go to all sorts of places, but I never had more fun than when a big group of us went to the nearest.
yeah. They are good fun. And you don't have to kind of worry about how much you know what I mean, spending because yeah,
Yeah, and it was just something. I mean, I haven't been to one for ages, mostly because no one will go to one with me. I haven't been to one for ages, so I don't know what they're like these days, particularly the ones that we used to go to in the city. There was just something about it. People were just being more real. There's no pretentiousness in a spoons, because that just doesn't make any sense to be
yeah,
pretentious in a spoon.
yeah,
You go to other bars, cocktail bars, you just put on a fancier air. Maybe you sit straight a little bit more. Maybe you're looking around, you're preening your feathers. Everyone is, no one's doing that in a Spoons. You can just be yourself.
Yeah,
And that's why I loved any night out that was in a Spoons. I'd be right, I'm in.
yeah. They are good fun. I have to say that I think that they do vary depending on which area you go to.
Yeah, of
The
course.
one in my hometown's terrible.
I've never even I've never stepped foot in to the Spoons in Harrow. I don't actually know why, but I've never stepped foot in there. But, I used to there's a Spoons in Farringdon, it's still there. So I went to university in central London, and many an afternoon was spent in that Spoons when I was at uni.
Yeah,
And a couple of Spoons in other parts of the city as well when I was working in the city, many an evening, many an afternoon as well in those Spoons. So yeah, it's again thinking about those sorts of things. There's nothing wrong with going to a place if it means it's going to be more accessible to everybody. And in some cases, depending on the makeup of your workforce, you may want to think about not just going to boozy places. Again, you
yeah,
need to know your workforce to
absolutely.
understand that. And a very vague engagement survey isn't going to tell you whether you've got people that don't drink for whatever reason. It could be religious reasons, health reasons. You may have, people in recovery. You can either get really honest with your staff and say, hopefully we've got enough trust that exists between us for us to be able to ask you some of these kind of questions that we wouldn't that engagement surveys don't normally ask. Or you don't do it through a survey, but you have to have an environment where people can say to you, look, can we go somewhere different? Because I'm a recovering alcoholic and I don't like that our events are always in boozy places. I can't participate in the way that I would like to.
Yeah. Have you got any advice for an employer who's looking to do an engagement survey? Is that something that you would put together?
What I usually do is advise employers on, because there's so many big engagement survey platforms, and most of the time employers sign up to those. It makes it easier. But I help them tweak questions, and help them with adding questions in, because some of these survey providers and also content providers, so lots of employers use digital learning modules, and
Yeah,
they sign up to like a big platform, and
yeah,
these platforms almost have it's like a marketplace. So we've got all these e-learning modules, so you can just pick and choose the ones that you want. So those sorts of platforms, the engagement survey platforms, the content platforms, they are slow to make changes. I don't know how well the engagement survey platforms are keeping up with developments in EDI. In terms of how you word questions, it's really important.
yeah,
But I know for a fact that platforms that host content made by EDI consultancies, EDI companies, that they have got content on their platforms that is now out of date and on the verge of causing more issues than they think they might help solve. So I've got a client that uses, I won't mention which platform they use, but my client asked me to review 10 modules that they were thinking about releasing to their employees, EDI subjects. And so I had to, thank God I got paid for this, I had to sit and watch 10 e-learning modules. And I came up with it was actually a 60 or a 70% thumbs down rate. Do not use.
yeah,
That is really bad as a rate, you know, because some of them had incorrect information. Some of them were talking about people and talking about microaggressions in a way that actually would drive further division, because they are out of date. They don't keep up. And these modules, especially when you're using actors to play act scenarios, a single module could easily cost upwards of 30 grand. They have no incentive to kind of update it as
yeah,
times change, because they've handed it over to a platform. They've got paid. They're not going to blow another 30K because there's EDI pushback happening and people are asking more questions. But the platform needs to realize that if they're hosting that module, maybe they're exposing themselves up to risk, because the clients that are putting their employees through it at some point might turn around and say, hang on a minute, what is this nonsense you've got on here? Do you not know that times have changed? And what was really frightening is I spoke to this specific platform, and they have two people on there. They employ two people who review and moderate the content. And they said to me, we have so much content on here, not just EDI, they have anti-money laundering stuff, they have compliance content, God knows, you name it, everything. We have so much content on here, we can't watch it all with that lens to see if things have changed, things are out of date. And also, how could they? They're not going to be experts in all those subjects. You can't be an expert in the whole range of content that platform is hosting. So I would just say that if you're an employer using e-learning modules provided by those big subscription platforms, be a bit careful.
Wow. That's quite worrying, isn't it? Like, that's huge. Like, all the lawyers are going to be rubbing their hands together. Really worrying.
I mean, yeah, I mean, because it can call, even if the information in them isn't legally unsound, although there were one or two where it was legally unsound, even if the information isn't legally unsound, these modules are advising people on how to interact with each other, and that could lead to a problem that ends up at the lawyers at some point.
Mm-hmm. That's really worrying. Well, Heeral, it was really great to talk to you. Is there anything that you would like to promote?
Yeah, you know what? The paper that I released in May, it's called Freedom of Expression and Belief Conflicts Are the New EDI Frontier. It's a bit of a mouthful, but I'd like to promote that.
Okay.
It's available via my LinkedIn profile. There's a link right underneath my name. You can click
Okay.
through to it.
I'll put it in the show
And
notes.
maybe when you publish it, you can
Yeah.
put a link in the show
Yeah,
notes.
will
Yeah.
do. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you for having me. It was great, Kelly.
Thank you.